What was the case that really made you sit back and say, huh, there's really something to this? This might indeed have something to do with extraterrestrial, and there might be more that's going on here than meets the eye.
Oh, Ryder, I think that the very first case that I had was so convincing. And the gentleman that I got, I mean, he's become a good friend now, but he was very middle-aged man, very articulate, had heard that I was open-minded. And basically he came to see me because he didn't know where else to go. He said, look, there's no support groups for this. For this, they just think you're crazy. Wait, he woke up with marks on his body, shaved areas. His partner was having experiences, the children were. People wouldn't come to the house, or his relatives wouldn't come to the house because they thought it was demons. So you've not got one person there, you've got a whole family involved, and that immediately changes the way that you would look at it anyway. So for me, it was primarily my very first case, although I had done a little bit of reading prior to that. Fortunately, I'd come across Dr. John Mack's book, you know, the former Harvard professor of psychiatry who'd written the book Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens. And he'd come from being a skeptic, doing all the psychological testing, and really in the end absolutely believed those that he'd researched. And so you've got someone pretty credible saying, I believe this is real, who started the center to explore this professionally. And also I read Whitley Strieber's book Communion, which is classic, the first major one to really stand out for me. So I got that in the background. But actually meeting someone, I thought it was very rare, though. That was probably my biggest mistake, thinking it was rare, because of course now I know it isn't, and it's everywhere. But at the time, more than anything, I didn't ever feel I could disbelieve Ellis, because he was just so darn convincing, and so was his family. So really, right from the word go, it was going to be possible, although I needed to find out more and more. And of course, over the years, I mean, it became absolutely obvious that something major was going on this planet, and the governments were not letting you know.
Which is really interesting to me because it seems like the abduction phenomenon and the contact experiences isn't necessarily physical contact. It's more of it's more done in the astral state or the dream state. Is that something that you have found too? Or I guess my question is have you spoken with anyone or worked with any of the 3,000 people that you've worked with? Have they ever experienced an actual physical entity in their home, or is this done on a spiritual and consciousness level in the dream state or in the astral state?
It's a good question, and it's both. What we discovered with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, I'm a co-founder of that. We did the surveys with 4,200 people globally, conscious recall, 600 questions. And one of the fascinating facts that came out from that was 75% of their encounters were out of body. But you still got 25% that were physical. So, that in itself, I think, is pretty compelling. And people will have both. Sometimes they'll wake up with marks on their body, for example, the pajamas under the bed or in the cupboard, or different pajamas on, or find themselves outside with the doors locked, and this kind of thing, which makes it absolutely physical. And there's many cases of that. But there's also many that in my survey, that I send out, in the dream state, they'll say, oh, I had a dream where I was on a UFO, never knew whether it was real or not. And the question I ask them is, when was that dream? And they may say 5 years ago. And I'm saying, and you still remember it? I can pretty well tell you that that was the reality. So absolutely both states. And sometimes what I've found on board craft, if they're working on the physical body, they'll move the consciousness somewhere else and actually work on maybe the brain itself, and then the consciousness will be, if you like, reattached to its physical body, or put back into its physical body.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I I've been studying this a little bit, and I personally think that a lot of the phenomenon is done by our military and clandestine organizations and the government. So, what in your research has led you to believe that these are actual extraterrestrial encounters? What, I know this is a broad question, but what is it that they want with humans? Is it an upgrading? Are they trying to change us? Are they trying to change our consciousness to develop us more? Like, why the experimentation and the taking of our DNA, and in some cases a semen from men and eggs from women, hair follicles, and all of this stuff? What is the reason behind that?
Well, there's a couple of questions in that, really. So let's look at the pseudo abductions for a start. The MyLab, which is the military or sections of the military that are abducting people, doing pseudo abductions, making them think it's extraterrestrial in many cases, terrorizing them, drugging them, and what have you, and interrogating them. The program for that is primarily to find out if they what happens on board craft, what they're learning on board craft, what they're as much information on the beings as possible that the military are trying to find out, and they will actually re-traumatize them, and they're usually the most traumatized that I come across are the ones that have had MyLab. Now the real ones, let me give you an example of what the survey said. Now, I wrote Awakening, how extraterrestrial contact can transform your life. I found that with the ones that were genuine encounters, and I mean, I've talked about the fact that 3,500 people, families and children that I've worked with, the surveys that Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation did on the outcomes, and there are some amazing outcomes. And that is the real truth of the agenda, when 85% of that 4,200 said they had a psycho-spiritual transformation. Now, that in itself gives you a pretty good idea of what is the outcome. The outcome is they often change their diet, they become more holistic, many of them become healers, many of them want to live a more eco-friendly lifestyle. They become completely disinterested in living in a consumer society. Many of them want to connect with the planet. So you've got a complete change in philosophy and motivation after their experiences. And most of it is to be about caring for the planet, being a better human being. Now, if you've got a dark agenda from these beings, that is not the outcome you expect for a start, you know, because why would they bother to upgrade consciousness, wake people up, and enhance their awareness, their multidimensional abilities? Because that's the bit that I help a lot with, is once they've had contact, they start to see spirit beings and many other beings in, you know, around them, energy fields. They'll start to see orbs of light. They'll start to become more empathic, for example. All these abilities seem to be enhanced after they have their contact experiences. So what it seems that many of the species, and look, I can't say that all of them are benevolent because I don't know that. All I know is with all the surveys we've done, ultimately the majority find it has completely transformed their life and their awareness. And that in itself, I think, is very profound.
It almost sounds similar to a near-death experience, right? Because when people have a near-death experience, they tend to come back different, right? And they want to change things about their life. And it would kind of make sense if, like what you were talking about earlier, if they take the consciousness out of this physical avatar that we were in to do things to our physical body, then that would, whether you knew it or not, that would technically be a sort of out of body experience or some sort of near death experience. Have you connected any near death experiencers to this phenomenon at all?
Ryder, you're obviously very well informed, and absolutely. What I discovered was that those that had near-death experiences then often were communicating with spirits or ETs or interdimensionals or whatever, Those that have had shamanic experiences, there's parallels with that. Those that start opening up spiritually, whether they're doing healing practices or whatever, start to open up and see more of the dimensions and more of the different types of beings, from angelic beings right through to interdimensionals, extra dimensionals, transdimensionals, some from our visitors from our future. So you've got all these ways that when we expand our consciousness, then we also expand our interactions with all these different intelligences. And I've often said that the UFO contact experience is like a modern day shamanic wake-up call, because after it, you know, like the shaman has to transcend their human fears to operate in a multidimensional reality. What happens after the encounter experience? Exactly the same thing. They have to transcend their human fears and then embrace a multidimensional awareness. So it's exactly the same. The parallels are exactly the same. So channeling, all these abilities, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, all of these things get expanded once you have this experience. But it can happen through a near-death experience. It can happen through out-of-body experience. It can happen if you've learned remote viewing. It can happen with anything that expands your consciousness. You start to see more of, if you like, the hologram and who's in there. And it's all in the same bucket, the same space, if you like, or multidimensional space.